Hello, this is Transfer Talk. What a morning it's already been, and we are set for a really busy afternoon before that 11 p.m. deadline in England.
Yeah, we really are. This hour, we are joined by a whole host of European football experts. We've got Andy Brassell, Mina Rzouki and Nicky Bandini here in the studio with us.
We'll be getting their insight from across Europe, including the latest stories from Italy. We'll be live to Spain at 12:15 with Fernando Callas. Then to France at 12:30 with Jonathan Johnson. And finally, we're in Brazil with South American football expert Tim Vickery. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is closing in on a move back to the Premier League. The latest on his future coming up. And Jurgen Klopp looks set to sign a midfielder as their injury crisis worsens, with Artemelo on his way to England. Right, however, we've got some breaking news straight away. Leicester have just signed their first outfield player of the summer, and Rob Dawson has the details.
Yes, done deal. Leicester City have completed their first outfield signing of the summer. Less than 11 hours until that window closes. They've left it late, but they've got Wout Faes, the Belgian international centre-back from Reims. He's signed a 5-year contract. A fee, we believe, is worth up to £15 million. And he will be at the game tonight against Manchester United at King Power Stadium. Can't play in it, of course, but expect him to be there watching when he can meet the rest of his teammates. And from a Leicester supporters' perspective, it's a difficult sell, isn't it? You've lost Kasper Schmeichel, club legend. You've lost Wesley Fofana, your best player, arguably, for £70 million, and they've spent £15 million on a replacement. But this kid came through the Anderlecht Academy. He's 24 years old. Leicester think he's a good prospect who they can add value to. He will get game time for Leicester this season, and Leicester are still trying to do a right winger with Jeremy Boga still on the agenda for them. But done deal for Leicester. It's taken them a time, hasn't it, to get to this stage, but they've got one across the line. A Wout Faes, centre-back from Reims, signed and sealed on a 5-year contract.
Rob, thank you.
Something for Leicester fans to be happy about. A few other bits of breaking transfer news to bring you now. And Arsenal have now bid £20 million for the Aston Villa midfielder Douglas Luiz. Sticking with Arsenal, their right-back Hector Bellerin remains in talks over a mutual termination of his Arsenal contract. His representatives are in advanced discussions over a move to Barcelona. That is, of course, once he actually becomes a free agent. And a bit of news from Wolves as well. They have accepted a £13 million bid from Aston Villa for their midfielder Leander Dendoncker. So lots of breaking transfer news, as you'd expect on deadline day.
Wow, what a start. Right, OK, we can now actually finally get to our guests. We are delighted to welcome Mina Rzouki, Nicky Bandini and Andy Brassell alongside me and Emma. Andy, I think straight away, let's get to that reaction that you can see, that big breaking news at the bottom of the screen about Leicester signing Wout Faes.
It's worked out quite well for him, because, go back to the weekend, he thought he was going to Torino. At the last minute, Torino decide to undercut Reims and decide that they're not going to pay the 15 million, and that leaves them stuck, because Faes has got his bags packed, he's all ready to come, and he's really, really disappointed that the move to Torino doesn't come through. And then this Leicester thing falls into his lap, which is more money, gets to come to the Premier League. I think he'll be really glad how it's happened. Now, I understand, like, Leicester fans have been pretty tense this summer because, of course, it's been really slow moving in the transfer market. It's something Brendan Rodgers has talked about. But this is exactly the sort of market that they should be shopping at. You know, this is a guy who's been very, very consistent over the last couple of years in Ligue 1. He's strong, he's physical, he's going to win his aerial challenges, and he's a good leader in that defence. You look at Fofana, when he came across, Rob was talking about them losing Fofana. I don't think there were loads of Leicester fans who'd seen him play loads before he arrived. He'd only played 20 games or so in Ligue 1. I think Faes will be really good for them.
Leicester sort of have precedent in doing that, though. Players that you haven't really heard of, and getting them in for a reasonably good fee as well.
Ante, Mahrez, well, Fofana for a start, straight away, loads of them.
Yeah, I think in terms of timing, timing, you want to feel that there's a plan. So you want to feel that they were going to do something a little bit earlier. But, you know, things have been tight for Leicester. I still think they've got a good deal. And as we've seen with Manchester United and Casemiro, a panic buy can still be a good buy.
I think there's something else to that as well, which is we're just hearing 70 million pounds brought in for Fofana. But if everyone knows you've got that burning a hole in your pocket, to be able to do a deal at that sort of price is actually even more impressive because, you know, we're going to talk about this, I'm sure, on this section, but a lot of European clubs are applying a Premier League tax when they're selling players this summer, and I think that's a good price for Fas.
Well, they've managed to do it late on as well, haven't they? A player that we've been talking about a lot this window is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. He is edging closer to a move back to the Premier League and back to Chelsea. What do you make of that move?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've heard sort of debates on whether or not, you know, he's going to be the perfect fit. Obviously, we know that Thomas Tuchel has worked with him before and understands the way that he plays, but I wouldn't have necessarily thought that he was the forward that they were looking for. I understand why he's being brought in, and they do need a finisher at the moment because it looks like it's just they're not really converting their chances as well as they should. I'm not entirely sure it's Aubameyang. I do like his movement, but in tight spaces, is he going to be the guy with all the fluidity that Thomas Tuchel requires up front? It remains to be seen.
It's definitely interesting, that signing, because you think when he went to Barcelona, there was this whole conversation about Iniesta having said in the past, look, I just don't think he's a Barcelona sort of player. He's not someone who
Xavi said something similar as well.
Sorry, I meant to say Xavi.
Okay.
That's how closely you link those two in your mind. I meant to say Xavi.
That's all right.
Said something about how, yes, like he didn't see Aubameyang as a Barcelona type of player because he's a finisher and not someone who interconnects. And that's exactly sort of the trap that Chelsea maybe fell into with Lukaku, as he wasn't someone who fit into their system. But having said that, Aubameyang went to Barcelona, scored 11 goals, I think, in half a season. I actually think this is potentially a very, very nice signing.
Short to medium term, absolutely, because I think it's not just the goals, and of course the goals are important for Chelsea at the moment. He was fully invested at Barcelona. You know, there have always been questions about Aubameyang's attitude at Dortmund in the back end of that, at Arsenal in the back end of that. He gave everything, and the work he did off the ball, I think that's what's going to attract Tuchel. He gave so much to the team.
So, will the Barcelona fans actually be quite disappointed by this? And is he only been allowed to leave for purely financial reasons?
Yeah, I mean, they've had to shift. They really ideally need to get rid of him and Memphis, who's been looking at a termination of his contract. At one point, it looked like he was coming to Juventus. You know, maybe there's still a Premier League move in this day for Memphis. We'll have to wait and see. That wouldn't be the most shocking thing to me. But Xavi was always clear. He wanted to keep Aubameyang. You know, go back to the first game of the season when they're playing Rayo Vallecano. They drew 0-0. And they brought on Aubameyang, and he looked the most likely to crack it open in the last 20 minutes of that game, despite the fact they had Rafinha, they had Lewandowski, they had Dembele.
It's too many. This is the whole problem.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you want Lewandowski, if you want Ansu Fati, if you want Dembele, if you want Rafinha, if you don't want any of these people to shine, then you're going to have to shift a few. And Aubameyang is a great luxury to have, but one they can't afford.
Yeah, I do think there's one other thing that's really interesting in this transfer, which is it's just January we're talking about that Arsenal were moving him on. And at the time, there was this big conversation. Arsenal wanted to terminate his contract to move him on to Barcelona. Barcelona wanted to do a loan. That went to the very end of deadline day, if you remember. It was a real sort of battle of wills almost between Arsenal not wanting to let him go on loan and Barcelona saying we're only willing to do a loan. Finally, Barcelona came and say, OK, we'll take on his contract. And now, 6 months later, to be able to get 10 million euros, 10 million pounds, I'm not sure which it is.
Plus a player.
Plus a player.
Plus a player.
They've done some good business here as well, actually.
Tom and I were on the breakfast show this morning, so we were on set from 7 o'clock, and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is a deal that we were talking about then. A deal we weren't talking about was Arthur Melo to Liverpool. We know that Liverpool potentially were in for a midfielder today, but what do you make of that move?
It was really interesting because I was hearing this debate about whether or not Liverpool should buy anyone. And one thing that I've always really admired about them is that they've always invested in players that they've always wanted, players that they've scouted for a really long time, and players that will make the difference to the squad tactically, technically, and also just on a psychological level, whether or not they mesh. For me, I'm not sure whether Arthur Melo is more like a body that they're bringing in right now. He is somebody who certainly a lot of us, when we watched him grow in Barcelona and then obviously moved to Juventus. I watch Juventus every week, and I was really excited for him to come. But you could see the potential. You could see the brilliance. But then there's parts of you that just think it's never come to fruition. It's never been shown on a consistent level. And he's had fights with certain coaches who have not been able to see eye to eye with him. on a tactical level, not because he's not professional, but because he has something in his head that he wants to achieve. I want to deliver a direct ball. Okay, but what happens if there isn't that opportunity? Can you be flexible enough in your midfield to be able to say, okay, well, right now the team needs me to do this. Right now I need to widen. And he doesn't make those decisions very effectively, which is what, for example, really angered Andrea Pirlo. I'm interested to see whether we can see that potential extracted by Jurgen Klopp, because we know that he's a magician at that.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of like another fascinating transfer, because actually Juventus still kind of need a player like Archer. They need someone who can move the ball. They need someone who can be that sort of circulator of possession. Well, maybe now with Moretti, the teenager, coming through, they need him less. But the idea is still there. When they signed him, they wanted someone who could circulate the ball, who's like a quick mover, honor of the ball. And he, in theory, is good at that, Archer. He started quite brightly at Juventus, but injuries in his first season sort of knocked things right off. He had this very sort of particular situation with a ossification of the membrane in his right leg that required surgery, and it got quite complicated. And I wonder if things could have been different for him without the injuries, but he did end up playing over 2 seasons enough games to have impressed more than he did, and by the end it just felt like he didn't fit.
So, if he's not fitting at the moment, you'd think, OK, well, Juventus, at least they would sell him. But this is a loan with no option or obligation to buy. Does that make any sense to you? Or is it a case of, well, just Juventus are thinking completely surplus to requirements?
It is that he is surplus to requirements. Also, they are desperate for him to show off what he can do. They hope that he will take off at Liverpool so that eventually there would be an outcome to all of this rather than just a loss of money, because they know for a fact that he won't be played. Allegri has made it very clear that he doesn't require him in the team and that he has many others that he would prefer to play over him. There's another thing when it comes to Melo, in the sense that he wants to be in perfect condition when he plays. He doesn't like to play with slight injury. That's always been the rumour. Obviously, that's not something that I can obviously tell you for a fact, but I think that's also something that's put off certain coaches. But it's a case of let's do this. Let's see whether or not he shines at Liverpool. Maybe then we'll get a flood of offers in and we can do some business.
Well, let's go from Liverpool to Manchester City then, who've announced a signing today. The centre-back, Manuel Akanji from Borussia Dortmund. Is he a Manchester City type of player?
In a way, it's a surprising signing to me, because Dortmund have been keen to move on from him. You think they've signed basically Germany's centre-back partnership this summer in Niklas Süle, a player that Bayern didn't want to let go, which is a huge signing for them, and Nico Schlotterbeck, who's the crown prince of German defending. So Akanji has become surplus to requirements when it became clear he wouldn't sign a new contract. I've never been convinced about him as a pure defender. And I think if you go back a little bit, when Manchester City last signed a major centre-back, of course they got on board Ruben Dias, which is kind of a departure for Pep Guardiola. It's like a defender who likes to defend. To retain possession and thinks, OK, maybe he's a guy who I can develop a bit. Because at Basel, when he first came through, he looked a terrific player. And, you know, I wonder if some of these Premier League clubs have been interested in. Manchester United were interested in him going back earlier in this window. They're thinking of that early potential, because if they've watched him recently, I think they'd be a little bit concerned about whether he can do it on a regular basis.
Does it strike you that Borussia Dortmund don't really ever seem to have a perfect defensive plan? Because I feel like defending as a team, it's an art, and you have to have the whole team involved. And I've never seen a clear defensive plan from Borussia Dortmund. It's always a little bit haywire at the back. And obviously that has been something that a lot of people accuse Manchester City of at the back. You know, they do like defenders who sort of are good on the ball, but not necessarily, like you said, strong enough defenders. But I wonder if he is in a set organised... Well, he is a self-confessed Manchester United fan, so that's interesting. Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So he's a United fan going to Manchester City.
Childhood pictures coming out soon.
The bedspreads. But I wonder if there is a set perfect organisation and he develops a partnership at the back, whether or not he can be better, but I can certainly see your concerns.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, Dortmund have recognised that's an issue. They've brought in Salih Özcan to sit in front of their defence, and Axel Witsel wasn't athletic enough to do that last season, and he suffered from a few injuries. So maybe if you've got Calvin Phillips in front of you,
exactly,
it's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, OK. Very quickly, Andy, Edson Alvarez, there was talk of him going to Chelsea, and there are some reports in the Netherlands that he's not particularly happy there.
Yeah, some Dutch sources are saying that he's refused to train today. And I wonder if it's really Antony opening the way for everyone else. Because Alfred Schreuder, the coach of Ajax, he was saying, going back a week and a half, Antony's not going anywhere. As far as I'm concerned, he's not going to be sold. We've sold the players we agreed to sell. But then, of course, Antony down tools, Manchester United up their offer, and we saw where that went. Now, we've seen this week Mohamed Kudus, who's wanted to move to Everton, has sat out of training to try and force that move through. And it looks like Edson Alvarez is doing the same thing today. Now, of course, the Dutch transfer window shut last night, so they've got no possibility to replace him if he were to go. But he's sort of trying to force Ajax to sell him to Chelsea. And I just wonder if they've seen what's happened with Antony, the rest of the squad, they're thinking, OK, if we sit out, maybe we get our move. So it'd be interesting to see if Ajax can work the clock and make him stay for the rest of the day.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Right, plenty to come. Our next destination is Madrid. We'll get insight from Spanish football expert Fernando Calas. I'm told he's wearing another wonderful shirt. Last week, I was after the one he was wearing. I'm told this one is even better.
Oh, brilliant.
Right, welcome back. Let's get to Spain now for the latest transfer news. We're heading from London over to Madrid, and our Spanish football expert Fernando Calas joined us. I want to see this shirt. Everybody's been telling me that it's right up my street. Oh, Fernando.
That would really suit you,
Fernando,
actually, yeah.
I would love that shirt, but I'm afraid for me it would not be accurate. But I do love it nevertheless.
Well, it's accurate. It's accurate for every single player, for every single sport, when you ask them how they are feeling, you know? So it's like it could be accurate for me and you. It's no problem at all.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, good one. Right, OK, Fernando, now Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, he's close to joining Chelsea. Is that a good deal for all parties?
Well, I think so. I think it's kind of bizarre that he just arrived from London, from Arsenal, and now he's going 6 months later to Chelsea. I think that he didn't expect that. I think nobody expected. But, well, everything... It's unexpected related to Barcelona this season. They are working on closing the deal in the next hours, I think. People are saying that he's already traveling to London to pass his medicals. We have to remember that he was victim of, he was attacked, he was assaulted in a home robbery at his house in Barcelona on Monday. It is reported that he has a broken jaw, so we don't know what is the timeable for him to go back into action. But it's going to include. It's going to be a money amount. It's something around 10 million euros plus Marcos Alonso that is already in Barcelona, also just waiting to start training.
Yeah, Fernando, just breaking away for a moment. We've got some breaking news, and it comes from Leeds. Leeds fans, you've been after a striker. You are going to get one because Leeds have agreed to deal with Marseille for the striker Bamba Dieng. The fee, we're told, is in excess of £10 million. He's expected to fly to the UK later today for a medical and finalise personal terms. Well, he'll have to because it's deadline day. Fulham had held talks with Marseille earlier this summer, but he's not going to Fulham. It's our understanding he's going to Leeds. So a fee in excess of £10 million agreed between Leeds and Marseille for the striker Bamba Dieng.
Right, let's get back to Fernando. Fernando, we're not going to ask you about that, don't you worry. Let's get back to talking about Barcelona. You said that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is heading out the exit door, but they want to offload a number of players in this transfer window. Will the likes of Jordi Alba, Memphis Depay and Frankie de Jong get some deadline day moves?
Well, we just heard that the Jordi Alba to Inter Milan, it's off. It's not going to happen because Jordi Alba didn't want to leave. They're pushing very hard for Jordi Alba to leave because he has this huge contract. He'll stay. I don't know how much he's going to play this season. I'm listening that Xavi is angry because he was pushing until the last moment for him to leave. But it's hard to leave a city like Barcelona, even when you have a huge contract like him. So he's going to stay. I don't know what's going to happen still with Memphis Depay. And we are listening that Barcelona could also add Bellerin, that he could be joining Barcelona today as a free transfer from Arsenal. So Barcelona could have two new defenders, Spanish defenders, in the next hours.
Fernando, you told us a bizarre story about Antoine Griezmann. You know at the time I was absolutely obsessed with this story because I didn't know anything about it. Just remind us of this Antoine Griezmann clause.
He has a clause that he can't play more than we don't know because it's a secret clause, but it's said to be that he cannot play more than 30 minutes. For a certain amount of games. Instead, if he play more than that, Atletico have to pay 40 million euros to Barcelona. So that's why he started from the bench every single of the 3 games from Atletico in the beginning of the season. And it is reported that Atletico and Barcelona is trying to get to a middle ground, you know, so Griezmann can play if he stays at Atletico. But if they can't find this middle ground, it is reported that Atletico could just sell Griezmann in the next hours. So it's a really bizarre situation. We live in a really bizarre summer with this Griezmann story, all this Cristiano Ronaldo situation, the virtually impossible transfer of Casemiro to Manchester United. It's so many things, and the most interesting thing is that there are many of these stories we still don't know what's going to happen.
But this is why we're trying to get the answers from you, Fernando. We've had so many chats with you throughout the transfer window. It would only be right that we talk about Cristiano Ronaldo again. You mentioned him there. Of course, Erik ten Hag has come out yesterday in his news conference saying, look, he's staying at the club. But it is deadline day. Anything is possible. Is there any possibility of him heading to Spain today?
It's just, I won't say that anything is impossible anymore. It's just crazy, you know. It's Cristiano Ronaldo. Is he going to stay in the bench, warming the bench the entire season? It's just crazy for me. All the information that I just talked to a friend from Portugal. He's saying that he's staying. But I keep listening that the boards, the directors from Atletico de Madrid, they are still pushing for that. Simeone is completely against it. So there is this small discussions and war inside Atletico Madrid. You know, from one side, they want to sign him. The coach doesn't want him. Everything that I'm listening is that he's going to stay, but nothing is virtually impossible.
Fernando, great to see you. And yet again, that's the second shirt of yours that I want in the post. See ya.
Take care, guys.
Let's just remind you of that breaking news. Leeds have agreed a deal with Marseille for a striker, Bamba Dieng, fee in excess of £10 million. He'll be coming to the UK later today for a medical and to finalise personal terms. Fulham were in for him, but it looks like Leeds have got their man. In fact, we might have some Fulham news in just a moment. We're just checking something out on a striker for them. In fact, it's been checked. In that 1 second, it's been checked. And I can tell you, we've got some breaking news from Fulham as well. So instead of signing Bamba Dieng, they are close to signing Carlos Vinicius. It's thought to be €5 million, to about £3.5 million roughly. He's been on loan at PSV Eindhoven. The loan will be terminated for him to make the move to Fulham. And by the way, Fulham forward Ivan Cavallero is close to joining Olympiacos on loan. Carlos, is that the one who was at Tottenham? Carlos Vinicius, is that a different one?
Yes, it's the same one.
Same one.
So he still belongs to Benfica.
OK, so he came on loan but couldn't oust Harry Kane, understandably, at Tottenham. It looks like he is on his way to Fulham from Benfica. But just going back to Bamba Dieng, what are Leeds getting?
I'd rather have him than Carlos Vinicius, put it that way. Very different sorts of strikers. Carlos Vinicius is that sort of target man sort of player, as Tottenham fans will have seen. Bamba Dieng has had a weird contract situation. They decided at the start of the summer, as he only had a year left on his contract, Marseille, that they wanted to sell him. They made other plans. They changed coaches. They brought in Alexis Sanchez, of course, who did very well in his first starts for Marseille. That Arsenal connection there is doing pretty well. Bamba Dieng's a young player with enormous potential, absolutely enormous potential. Capable of scoring spectacular goals, strong, makes good runs. I think he'll do great for Leeds, and it's an absolute bargain. And we haven't seen too many of those with Premier League clubs this summer, have we?
Yeah, good
Not
point.
too many, no. Right, well, next up, we are heading to France as Paris Saint-Germain offload players, and we're going to find out more about Leicester's latest signing as well.
Right, welcome back to Transfer Talk. Plenty to come on the show. Next, we are heading to France to join French football expert Jonathan Johnson, who is live for us in Paris. Happy deadline day to you, Jonathan. Thanks for coming on. We'll start with some of the latest lines. Leeds have now agreed a deal with Marseille for striker Bamba Dieng, fee in excess of £10 million. What will he bring?
Yeah, this one's an interesting one because Dieng is somebody that Marseille have been looking to move on for a while and cash in on. Finally, a bit of interest being shown in him. There was a number of clubs in France looking at him as well, but it sounds like the possibility of a permanent move, it favours Leeds at this moment in time, certainly from Marseille's point of view. And I think as well he'll bring, quite a raw talent to the team, somebody who perhaps is better off used as an impact substitute as opposed to a starter, but he has an explosive turn of pace and a very powerful shot. So I think he'll thrive in the Premier League, where he'll get a bit more space than he does in Ligue 1.
All right, just going to dot in there and bring you some quick breaking news. The breaking news that Newcastle are in talks with West Ham over their defender Harrison Ashby. He's a right-back. He's highly rated by David Moyes, but only has 1 year left on his contract. So Newcastle, of course, looking for cover in that position after that injury to Emil Kraft. So Ashby would actually be seen for Newcastle's first team. So the breaking news there, Newcastle in talks with West Ham over their defender Harrison Ashby.
Yeah, OK, let's get back to Jonathan Johnson now and talk about Southampton. They're close to completing a deal to sign Marseille defender Duje Kayetasar. Kayetasar? I don't know, you can tell me that. Kayetasar, that's the one. Not the first time the Premier League clubs have been linked with him, or at least had a look at him. What will he offer to them?
Yeah, Kayetasar, solid defender, somebody who I think is probably expected to be on the move before now. Obviously, he's been linked with a number of Premier League clubs in the past. There was no shortage of interest in him again. I think his form suffered a little bit, perhaps, when moves in the past have fallen through. Certainly wasn't at his best in the run-in last season in Europe. But, I think he's somebody who definitely has the profile to succeed in the Premier League and will relish the opportunity of a new start to bring the physicality that he can to that Southampton backline.
And someone certainly heading to the Premier League. Leicester fans, they finally have an incoming. It is Wout Faes. His medical is complete. Just tell the Leicester fans what they can expect.
Yeah, obviously there will be comparisons drawn between him and David Luiz because of the appearance, but he's a player who has improved over the last couple of years in France. He was, quite rough around the edges when he first signed for Reims, has really improved and worked on his discipline in the last year or so, and offers a bit of a goal threat going forward as well. So definitely a player to keep an eye on, and I think Leicester, given their financial restraints, have done pretty well to get him out of Reims at this late stage in the transfer window.
Paris Saint-Germain, they're offloading players this week and done a quite good job of it. Are they just shifting money off the wage bill?
Well, the objective has been to rebuild the midfield for PSG since Luis Campos and Christophe Galtier arrived. So you've had a number of players moving on. Paredes going to Juve yesterday. Idrissa Gueye to Everton should be any moment now. And then you've got a couple of other players moving on as well. You've already had Wijnaldum, of course, as well earlier this summer. And then you've got guys like Carlos Soler coming in, Fabian Ruiz. PSG have really rebuilt that midfield. Renato Sanchez as well, Vitinha. So it's certainly got a bit of a Portuguese flavour to it now, the middle of the park. But PSG needed to rebuild that area so they weren't as dependent on Marco Verratti. And you can expect other players to be on the move as well. Abdou Diallo on the verge of joining, Leipzig on loan, and of course Layvin Kurzawa to Fulham as well.
Jonathan, it feels like we've been asking you about Houssam Aouar for years because he was linked to a move to Arsenal windows ago. This window, it's been about him potentially coming to Nottingham Forest. Is he going to end up in the Premier League?
It's sounding unlikely now that Aouar will be on the move. It did seem a possibility even as recently as a week ago, but I think some of the late changes in the transfer window for Lyon, notably Paqueta going to West Ham, have really changed their tack. And there is a hope that Aouar can rediscover his best form at Lyon, certainly since they've moved back towards a more homegrown approach with a lot of talent from their youth academy, Lacazette returning to Liso as well. So I think there is still a hope that Aouar can salvage some sort of form, but I don't think that will stop him from being linked with Premier League clubs again in January and next summer.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Any other deals to keep an eye on today, Jonathan?
I think we've covered most of them for the moment from France, but obviously, PSG being the big story over here, and whether they can get all the deals done, and whether they can perhaps pressure Inter Milan into letting Milan Skriniar go late on.
Brilliant stuff, Jonathan. Lovely to see you.
Right, OK, so talking about France there, and the thing I know that you're all very interested in there was about Paris Saint-Germain getting rid of the players that they want to get rid of. How have they done that?
I think really the main thing is it's a World Cup year. That has made people go, because I think they've just got so many of these albatross contracts that at the start of the summer they got their old sporting director, Antero Enrique, who was at Porto, of course, as well before, to work on a special project, get rid of the players that we need to shift off the wage bill. Now, it's quite difficult to shift those players when they're having a lovely, relaxed life in Paris. They're earning an absolute ton of money. When if someone said to you, would you like to go somewhere else to do twice as much work for 1/5 of the wages, what would you say? Don't answer now.
And there's no Neymar birthday party.
Our bosses are behind us.
And I think particularly you look at Paredes, who's ended up at Juventus. He was thought to be the safest one because he's mates with Leo Messi, but then he was told you won't play ahead of the World Cup, which changed his mind pretty quickly. And of course he knows Italy pretty well from his time at Roma. The interesting ones are like Cazorla, didn't make a single appearance last season, has gone off to Fulham. OK, it's a long shot for him to get in the France squad. Julian Draxler, who will be joining Benfica at some point later today on loan, he needs to get some minutes before playing for Germany at the World Cup. If he doesn't play, they can't pick him. Hansi Flick can't pick him. There are so many others. You look at Mauro Icardi, told by the very blunt new coach, Christophe Galtier, I don't want you anywhere near the first team squad. He looks like he's going to end up in Turkey. They've got another week on their transfer window, so there's not such a rush for him to complete a move to Galatasaray or Fenerbahce if they're trying to gazump them. You think?
Oh God, yeah. He doesn't want to go away and start fighting.
You mentioned those players on massive wages. I mean, maybe none bigger than Neymar.
Yeah.
He was linked to a move to Chelsea. It didn't really seem realistic. I mean, it would take an incredible amount of money to get him out of PSG.
I think that's it, Emma. It's the contract. It's not actually the fee. I mean, obviously, optically, PSG couldn't give him away, but I think they'd quite like to if they were able to. But then again, because he knows that he's not the main guy anymore, that it's Kylian Mbappe, they've really got a tune out of him in the first part of this season. And talking of the World Cup being something that's really important, of course, this is something that could define his entire career, Neymar. So it's in his interest and in Leo Messi's interest to give everything for the first half of this season.
But he still provides a commercial impact, I mean, that he is still a name that sells jerseys, obviously, that attracts a lot of eyeballs to the games that PSG have, and they are very based on merchandise and on trying to raise their revenues in that direction. But I'm interested to see, because Enrique's come back, obviously, and working with Luis Campos. There are
I think
rumours
is probably a better description than with.
Yes. Rumours are that they're not that happy together. Rumours were that he wasn't happy, Thomas Tuchel wasn't happy with him. And I just feel like when you see sort of the madness on the pitch and now the madness upstairs, and will it all just blow over?
I just think it's so extraordinary. Like, you think 2 years ago, if you'd been told in a single summer you'd have Neymar and Ronaldo almost as these unmovable objects of the transfer window, like both at their clubs maybe would be happier not to have these players who are still capable of contributing at as high a level as anyone. And I think it does just come back to exactly what Andy said. It's a wage issue. Once you've got a certain level of wages, of course it's true they sell shirts, although shirt revenue isn't as much of it. I think actually it's social media branding that's the really powerful thing now.
Big name. Yeah.
When you looked at what happened for Juventus when they signed Ronaldo, their Instagram went from being sort of in the scheme of world football clubs irrelevant to being the #1 most followed Instagram account. And those things do have a value to clubs now. I know it seems like a silly thing to talk about, but that has financial value.
So sponsorship.
Well, they reached the Champions League final in 2015, and Schalke were making more in commercial revenue than they were.
Oh, wow.
That goes to tell you everything.
So yes, a player can do that. And one player, you mentioned Ronaldo there, when he was linked with Napoli, a lot of people were tweeting us saying, Victor Osimhen, why is nobody in the Premier League coming in for him? I mean, did anyone come in for him? Why didn't?
There were certainly inquiries. There were certainly inquiries to Napoli, Manchester United amongst them, and Chelsea amongst them. But he's a superlative player. I think the fee for him would be, without question, over 100 million euros right now. You think Napoli spent 70 million?
He deserves that.
Just a couple of summers ago, and he's worth it. And I think that's why it hasn't happened. Is I think even though I think very highly of him, I know Mina thinks very highly of him, he hasn't played that much because of the injuries he's had in the last year. So for a sporting director to say to their boss, to the person holding the actual funds, yes, I need 100 million euros for this player, it's probably a difficult conversation.
But also, it's not just what he can do on the pitch, it's the fact that he's so grateful to be a football player. Mm-hmm. And you see that in the way that he plays his football. He throws and gives everything that he has on the pitch. And he idolises Didier Drogba, wants to be the guy that's always said, I clean gutters before, I'm a professional footballer now, I'm so lucky to be here. I would love that boy on my team.
Yeah, and the fans would love it too, wouldn't they?
When you're talking about the transfer window over in Italy as a whole, I know you've both been really impressed with what Roma has done. We were sort of bowled over yesterday because there was this story about Justin Kluivert, who looked like he was heading to Fulham, and then the deal collapsed. It sounded an insane story.
Yeah, that was what you were talking about, Brexit.
It's unfortunately, it's a Brexit story. It is, because if England was still part of Britain was still part of the EU, then that transfer could have gone through, but now there's work permits required for players who are coming from the EU, and Justin Kluivert hasn't got the international track record that you're required to get that now. So unfortunately, it's kind of the only one they've missed, though. Roma have actually been very successful in that thing that Andy's been talking about, World Cup year, clearing out a lot of big contracts that have then allowed them to bring in a couple of big contracts, Paulo Dybala, Andrea Belotti. They've had a very strong low-spending summer. Of course, Jose Mourinho has been quick to point out, in terms of transfer fees, there's only about 2 other clubs in Serie A who spent less. So, of course,
sound like him.
Nobody should expect anything.
This is where we go back to intellectual prostitution, which is the term that he coined, right? And he talks about, the fact that 2 clubs spent less, but doesn't want to mention that he's got one of the highest wage bills in Serie A. Yeah. Doesn't want to mention that he spent nearly 100 million last season. So,
right. Well, next we've been all around Europe, haven't we? Well, next we're going to South America, live to Brazil, to ask what Artemelo will bring to Liverpool. Talk is South America. We're heading to Brazil, where we can join South American football expert Tim Vickery. Good afternoon to you, Tim. We have to start with Douglas Luiz. A host of Premier League clubs have been wanting him. Arsenal have made a £20 million bid, but Villa, they want him to stay. How do you see this one going?
Well, you're far closer to the action here than I am. We're going to be speaking a lot about Brazilians in the next few minutes and a lot about central midfielders. And I think it's striking that of all the positions, it's the central midfielders from Brazil who found it harder to adjust to top-level European football. And maybe Douglas Luiz fits a little bit in that because he hasn't quite lived up to the hopes that swirled around him. And Man City bought him first, was in the Brazil side at the start of World Cup qualification. He now can't get in the squad. But certainly after what he's done over the last few days, you could imagine why he would be part of Aston Villa's project to conquer the world corner by corner. You know, those goals that he's put in straight from a corner should have added a lot to the transfer price. Arsenal clearly wanting to strengthen their central midfield areas. We'll see if this will be enough to prize Douglas Luiz away from Villa and to North London.
What about Danilo then? Because he's another Brazilian, another midfielder that Arsenal have been linked with.
Indeed, yes. And it's been reported over here that they put in a 20 million bid for him. They're going to have to up that, I think. And I would have thought it's more likely that a deal might go through here in January than now. The reason is on Palmeiras, his side, the reigning champions of South America, the Copa Libertadores, and they're in the fight to win it for a third consecutive time. They've got the second leg of their semi-final on Tuesday. He's suspended for that, but if they get through, they will definitely want him to play the final because they can't replace him. What is he? What would he bring? He is dynamic, left-footed central midfielder. He's involved in all phases of play. He snaps in with tackles. He wins the ball. He distributes it quickly. He's on the move into the next phase of possession. He's not a world beater, never going to be a world beater, but he's a very, very useful player to have around who's really grown under Portuguese coach Abel Ferreira. It's going to take more than 20 million, I think, from Arsenal, and it might need a little bit of patience because I think Palmeiras don't need to sell now, and they clearly won't sell now for 20 million, and in an ideal world, they won't sell until January.
Right, again, we have to break away. We've got some breaking news just into us regarding Cristiano Ronaldo. It's not entirely surprising news, I've got to say, but it's an update on his future. He is with the Manchester United squad. They've got a game against Leicester tonight, even though it's transfer deadline day. We are told he is, quote, on the bus for that game against Leicester, making it, well, near enough impossible for him to get a move now between now and 11 o'clock tonight. So Ronaldo with the Manchester United squad today for their game against Leicester.
Yeah, will he get a first start of the season for Manchester United? Right, let's get back to Tim then. I want to ask you about Artem Melo, because this one took us by surprise around about 9:30 this morning. Are you surprised with that news that he could be joining Liverpool?
Surprised and intrigued. And as we saw yesterday, you know, Liverpool at their best, they're so vertical, so relentlessly vertical. And Artur is much more of a possession-based midfielder. You see him certainly more as a Guardiola-type midfielder than a Jurgen Klopp-type midfielder. And when he came up the ranks, huge hopes around him with Gremio. He was always seen as a Barcelona midfielder. And that's where his European adventure started. And it hasn't really come off. As I said, the central midfielders seem to have found it hardest to adapt to top-level European football. And he hasn't been getting a game at Juventus. There is a player there. There's a player, lovely low centre of gravity, excellent at keeping possession, and it looks as if this deal is going through. It's one that no one saw coming, and it's Jurgen Klopp adding to his midfield options in a way that I think none of us could have foreseen.
Thanks so much for joining us throughout the window, and we'll chat to you soon.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Right, we are massively running out of time with me, Nikki and Andy here. Right, Andy, very quickly, Josko Vardial, a Chelsea target, signed a one-year deal at RB Leipzig. What are they missing out on?
Is the developing defender who can play left centre-back in a 3. So you're thinking of that Rudiger hole, or he can play left-back. He's going to be an absolutely terrific defender. I think it benefits him to stay at Leipzig for the extra year.
Who's been the best deal this window?
Oh, gosh, it's not...
Putting you on the spot, I know.
It's not a very Euro one, but I actually think it might just be Arsenal signing Gabriel Jesus. I think it's such a signing that fits what they needed. If you think about last season, how close they were to getting back into the Champions League places, and in the second half of the season, really, without a reliable goal scorer, Lacazette wasn't able to do that for them. So Gabriel Jesus, if he can be that, if he can link the attack the way he has in the first few games, I think it's a really, really smart signing.
Like their strategy, because they were really going hard for Dusan Vlahovic in January, but then they held out and waited to this summer to get a goal scorer in.
And he is providing all of that and a psychological kick as well. But there's also Haaland, and you just see this boy.
You can't not say him.
Yeah, who's scoring hat trick upon hat trick, and who just looks like he's having a time of his life. And I don't know if that's the best deal as well when you consider the money.
You got a best deal in mind, Andy?
Slightly under the radar one. I'm going to go for Mohamed Camara, who's gone from Salzburg to Monaco, holding midfield. He's going to be one heck of a player. Already is. Had a brilliant debut against Paris Saint-Germain at the Parc des Princes. They sold Tchouaméni to Real Madrid. They bought him for a fifth of the price, and they'll end up selling him for a Tchouaméni price in a couple of years' time.
To Real Madrid.
Any more that are sort of under the radar that we haven't been talking about?
Under the radar, but Charles de Ketelaere hasn't had a lot of sort of chat in England, I don't think, because it's one of those ones that didn't involve a Premier League club. But he's looked really, really bright. Young Belgian international who's starting games for Milan already and is really impressive and filling a gap that they need, having sold Frank Kessié, of linking the midfield and attack. Really looks like he's got some sort of, I guess, I don't know if physical growth is the right way of expressing it. He needs to sort of get used to the pace of a new league. He's obviously making a step up to Serie A from the Eredivisie, but he's looked really smart so far.
What about Lukaku back to Inter? I mean, you sell this player for over 100 million, you get him back a year later on loan. It's pretty great on a financial level because you just imagine that they're going to find a way of keeping him there and not having to pay a lot of money for it.
Has he been looking good?
Not quite yet, but we're hopeful.
First I've heard Mina praise Lukaku.
Yes, it's few and far between.
In one word, which clubs had the best window in Europe? One word. Dortmund. Roma.
Arsenal.
Okay, well, yesterday a lot of people were saying Arsenal yesterday as well, actually. It might have been you that said.
I said Arsenal.
And you said Gabriel Jesus as well. So
yeah, we're on the same
You are in sync. You are in sync, right? Nikki, Mina, Andy, so great to see you today. Thank you. That has been Transfer Talk. We've been on, Emma and I have been on since 7 o'clock this morning, so we're going to go home and go and watch the rest of Deadline Day. So many more deals to come. Our Transfer Deadline Day coverage continues. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang closing in on that move back to the Premier League. He's one of a few.
Right, this is it. 1 o'clock on deadline day. A warm welcome. We've had a bit of history already with Anthony becoming the most expensive deadline day deal. But we want and we will get much more drama between now and 11 o'clock. It might not involve Cristiano Ronaldo. We're told he is in the Manchester United squad for their game at Leicester tonight. That is one of the many subjects we'll discuss with former England international Leanne Sanderson.
Yes, teams getting busy. Talks are intensifying all the time. The window of opportunity getting smaller by the minute for managers to get the players that they need. We'll be hearing from some of them. They'll be popping up here. We'll be going around the country for updates.
From unlikely to now highly likely that Liverpool will do business. It's much needed as well with Jordan Henderson, the latest to suffer a hamstring injury. Arthur Melo has flown in for a medical ahead of a season-long loan from Juventus.
It's been a great start to the season from Arsenal. Victory last night made it 5 from 5, but there are concerns over injuries, particularly in midfield. And then the Sunderland club have put in a bid for Douglas Luiz. We'll have all the very latest from here at the Emirates.
And I'm at Stamford Bridge as Chelsea look to make 2 big signings ahead of tonight's deadline.
Nottingham Forest boss Steve Cooper has told us today he wants yet more signings. Not content with the 18 so far. And we know that Leeds want to get deals done. Jesse Marsh facing the media at 1:30 p.m. And here at Sky, we've got every single angle covered until that 11 p.m. deadline. And don't worry, if you're nipping out or sneaking a peek at work, Sky Sports app and website are across everything. And we are live right now on YouTube too.
18 summer signings for Forest make that 19. Willy Bolly is confirmed. They've tweeted, Bolly is a red. The deal with Wolves, it's worth £4.65 million, including add-ons. The initial fee, £2.25 million. The add-ons depend on appearances and whether Forest survive in the Premier League. You'll recall that Bolly refused to play for Wolves in the last game after speculation emerged. Also hearing right now that Fulham are in talks with Leeds over the loan signing of Daniel James. The deal is not done. It may be dependent on Bamba Dieng completing his move to Elland Road. Wales international James wants regular first-team football with the World Cup coming up in November. There have been 3 other Premier League clubs showing an interest, including Tottenham.
Not in a moment.
James felt that he wouldn't get the game time he wanted with Tottenham. So that is what has just happened as confirmed moves. Willy Bolly. The biggest surprise of the deadline day so far is Liverpool's loan move for Juventus midfielder Arthur Melo. Live to Vinny O'Connor. Is it in England yet, Vinny?
He is. The plane landed just a short while ago in Blackpool. Arthur Melo flying in from Turin after boarding a plane around about 10 o'clock this morning. That's ahead of a medical to be completed with Liverpool over a proposed, as you say, Nick, loan deal, a season-long loan from Juventus. It's much needed cover as well for Liverpool, isn't it, in that midfield area after Jordan Henderson suffered a hamstring injury last night. Of course, he's set to join the likes of Naby Keita, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Thiago as well in missing the Merseyside derby. Of course, Liverpool do still have Fabinho, Harvey Elliott, Fabio Carvalho available. Thiago isn't too far away actually from a return to fitness. Well, Curtis Jones is fit again. He was named on the bench, of course, last night, but clearly extra cover is needed. And OK, it's not the long-term target that Liverpool might have envisaged or hoped for, but Melo offers versatility in those midfield areas. He can play as a box-to-box midfielder. He can play the holding role. He can play as an attacking midfielder as well. And remember, he said before Liverpool played Barcelona back in 2019, of course, for me, Liverpool is one of the biggest clubs, one of the best clubs in the world, and he arrives potentially at Liverpool with a point to prove as well. His move from Barca to Juve hasn't worked out, and that could well be Liverpool's gain in this instance.
Vinny, thanks very much indeed. You mentioned that late goal from Fabio Carvalho last night. that boosted Liverpool so much against Newcastle. All the goals are on the Sky Sports app if you haven't caught up with the action from last night. Arsenal have won in midweek and they've made a £20 million bid for Aston Villa's Douglas Luiz. Live to Gail Davis at the Emirates. What do you know, Gail?
Yeah, a few goals here last night as well, weren't they, Nick? 5 from 5 for them. What a great start to the season by Arsenal. But there are concerns about the growing injuries, in particular in midfield. Mohamed El-Neni has a significant injury. Thomas Partey struggling with a bit of a thigh injury, and he's had a history of those, hasn't he? And Arteta said afterwards, it has made us kind of rethink. He said, we are looking at options in that area. One of those, as you mentioned, Douglas Luiz from Aston Villa, bid gone in, thought to be £20 million. Now, we know Aston Villa don't want to sell, so it could be a hard deal to do. We also know that there are a number of other clubs who are interested, like the Atletico Madrid and Chelsea been linked to him as well. So keeping a close eye on that one. And in terms of exits, well, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, we understand on the South Coast, having a medical, that's a loan with an option to buy. And Hector Bellerin, his future still a little bit unclear. Should know a little bit more a bit later on. Will he stay? There are other options in Spain as well.
Indeed. And let's bring in Leanne Sampson. Afternoon. How are your deadline day juices flowing so far?
Amazing, Nick. It's great to be back in here again, and it's so vibrant always here. But the fact that everyone's back in now during COVID, obviously there wasn't that many people in the studio, but there's no day like deadline day. I put it on my social media today, and it's just absolutely brilliant.
And what about Douglas Luiz? Is he going to boost Arsenal significantly?
I think so. I think it makes sense. I think £20 million now in this market is an absolute steal. So it makes sense. I like him. I think he can offer something different, not just because of El-Neni and the injuries and stuff like that, but I do think he's a good player and makes sense. And obviously he's in the last year of his contract. So if Arsenal can get this one across the line, I think it'll be massive. But I think Arsenal, for me, have had the best window. I really do. I think Zinchenko, Jesus coming in, the way that Manchester City and Pep just allowed these players to leave. I mean, I think Pep Guardiola doesn't really fear anybody, but at the same time, what a great signings they've made. So it makes sense to me, and hopefully they get him through the door because, like I said, 20 million is an absolute steal, and he's a good player.
Steven Gerrard and Villa were making all the right noises about wanting to keep hold of him, expecting to keep hold of him. How big a hole would he leave in the Villa midfield?
Absolutely, and I think obviously Aston Villa haven't got off to the greatest of starts. Okay. You know, McGinn obviously being given the captaincy hasn't had his best football this season. Don't know if that's playing a part in it, being given the responsibility, but I do think obviously Aston Villa need to get the results. They haven't done well enough of late. I think a lot of people have been talking about Steven Gerrard. You know, is he the right man for the job? Still debatable. Obviously people love him as a player, but that has to be left to one side at the point. So I think at one point they need to get more players through the door. I think obviously Danny Ings keeping him healthy I think is massive for Aston Villa. I think the fact that he was able to come in the last transfer window from Southampton so easily was unbelievable. It kind of blindsided everybody, didn't it? So Aston Villa are not in a good place right now, and obviously they need to keep hold of their best players, and I think Douglas Luiz is one of them.
One more quick word about Arsenal. They are looking, as far as we know, at Yuri Tielemans as well. Would you have a preference which of those two would be a better fit for Arsenal?
I think Tielemans, for me, I think Tielemans is a great player. I think he hasn't really been the same since his injury last year. I think he was linked to Arsenal last season as well. They didn't get that one through the line, but I think for me, I think Tielemans is a top player, and obviously Leicester are not going to want to lose any players. You know, they haven't signed anybody. They've lost Fofana. Kasper Schmeichel's gone over to France, and that is a massive loss as well. Leadership within teams is kind of wanting. So for me, I think Tielemans he's an all-round good player. I think Douglas Luiz is, but if I had a choice of the two of them, I'd take Tielemans.
Maybe the one thing that Tielemans didn't give you is guaranteed goals straight from a corner. He's done it twice in 2 weeks, Luiz. It's astonishing.
Yeah, I know. Something I've never been able to do. He's mentioned it before, Nick. I've never been able to score from a corner. That's not what you really want to do from a player's perspective, but a goal's a goal at the end of the day.
Leanne, thanks very much for now. Stay with us.
Lots of developments so far. Let me just run you through where we are at right now with less than 10 hours to go in this window. We know that Fulham are keen on Ben Brereton Diaz. They've already had a bid rejected for the Blackburn striker. Well, he trained with the rest of the Blackburn squad today. Blackburn have not had any new offers this morning. Meanwhile, Aston Villa have had a £30 million bid for the Wolves midfielder Leander Dendoncker accepted. Also, Leeds have agreed a deal with Marseille for their striker Bamba Dieng, part of the Senegal Africa Cup of Nations winning squad. The fee in excess of £10 million million. 3 Premier League clubs interested in signing Dan James. Cody Gakpo reports in the Netherlands claim that the current Dutch national team coach Louis van Gaal convinced Gakpo against joining Leeds. PSV standing firm on not letting him leave. We know that Southampton are linked with Gakpo. They're close to completing a deal to sign the Marseille defender Douye Chaleta-Car. He's seen as a replacement for Jan Bednarek, who is close to joining West Ham United. We know that Craig Dawson could be on his way out of the London Stadium. Another 2 Saints defenders also on the way out. Jack Stevens has completed his medical ahead of his season-long loan spell at Bournemouth, and Jan Valery is on his way to France to undergo a medical with the Ligue 1 side Angers. And going back to Fulham, they are close to signing Benfica striker Carlos Vinicius. You might remember he had a loan spell at Spurs a couple of seasons ago. The fee thought to be €5 million, so what's about £4 million. Deals to sign Layvin Kurzawa from PSG and Willian also expected to be confirmed this afternoon.
And that big deal that went through at 9:30 this morning. Confirmation at last that Manchester United have signed the Brazil winger Antony from PSV Eindhoven for just under £86 million. Leanne is a quiet, reserved Manchester United fan.
Am I?
No. Are you surprised they've gone to that much money, more than 85 million?
I think it shows you a little bit of desperation to a certain degree, but I think in this day and age, you know, I think soon we'll probably see $1 billion footballer. You know, I think the market has changed. But for me, we desperately needed, you know, obviously he could play on the left, he could play central as well. I think, you know, Marcus Rashford's come good of late, but I don't think you can rely upon Marcus Rashford to get you double digits in the season. Similar to Martial, I know a lot of fans have spoken how highly he's done during the pre-season, but I'm still not completely sold on Martial. I'm really not. When he's gone out on loan, he hasn't done great. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think Antony coming through the door, getting in, and Ten Hag knows him from Ajax, you know, and I think it's important to get players that want to come to Manchester United. I'm not saying Frankie de Jong didn't want to come, but clearly he didn't, realistically. You know, we've been talking about him coming for the last 3 months, and it kind of faded into nowhere. Chelsea were linked to him, so I'm happy that Antony's come through the door, and obviously Ten Hag knows him, and I'm really excited for this. I really am. It's a lot of money, though, isn't it? Realistically, it is a lot of money, but at the end of the day, sometimes you've got to put the money up, and Ten Hag's got a plan, and he's part of that plan.
Ten Hag also knows that he's also not guaranteeing you loads of goals. I think he got 8 last season. It's not his game to be an out-and-out scorer. Do United still need... You talked about Martial being not reliable, you don't trust him quite. Do they still need, from somewhere, an out-and-out goal scorer?
Well, we have that in Cristiano Ronaldo, but obviously...
He's only playing 20 minutes a game.
Right, but I'm talking about, like, last season, our top goal scorer. After that, I think it was Bruno with 4 goals or something like that. So it shows you that he can score goals, but the way it seems like Manchester United is setting up now, with this high press and that type of stuff, obviously Cristiano Ronaldo does not fit into that. But I don't like this agenda of people saying, you know, nobody wants him. They don't want him because they can't afford to have him. Realistically, who's going to say no to Cristiano Ronaldo? And I think there's a lot of emphasis about his age. He's still one of the greatest footballers in the world. And I think sometimes people age people. He can still do a job, and I mean, it looks like he's going to stay. I'm happy about that. The fans still sing his name. You know, I don't hold it against Cristiano Ronaldo for wanting to leave, because look at where the club has been. Since he re-signed for Manchester United, we haven't looked good at all. So you don't blame him. He's coming towards the end of his career. So why would you want to stay playing in a team that is so far off the top 4, doesn't look like we're getting anywhere near the top 4? Why would he stay there? Why would he want to end his Manchester United or his footballing career at a club like that? Because I'm sure what he signed for, it isn't what it's been made out to be. But Antony coming in, you know, Martinez coming in, Malacia, I think has been a fantastic signing. I really do. He's been brilliant. And obviously, we yet to see what's going to happen to players like Wan-Bissaka. They've been linked to moving away, but it looks like he's staying. But I'm seeing progression. But obviously, it is Man United. I know people laugh and say, oh, it's Manchester United. But at the same time, you have to see a plan in place. Look at Arsenal. They finally have the plan. It's coming into fruition of what they had in place for the last couple of years. I did question Arteta a number of times, because you do. You know, when you're watching these games, Arsenal didn't look like they were going places. They still missed out on the top 4 last year, which, you know, is not good. And if they miss out on the top 4 this year, it won't be good again. But at the same time, I think I just want to see progression and a plan. And I haven't seen a plan for Manchester United for a long time. When you watch the games, do you know what formation we're playing? Do you know who's going to play where? We've got Sancho in for 78 million. And, you know, it was like, I guess Ronaldo came through the door last minute, and it probably impeded Sancho to a certain degree of where he would play. But we just need all players playing well. And I think Ten Hag, you know, people, when I was on the show before, 2 Sundays ago, they were talking about him bringing the players in to run and that type of stuff. Well, obviously it worked, because against Liverpool, they were unbelievable. So giving managers time, not always wanting them to be gone, I think Arteta's proof in the pudding that if you have a plan in place with the young players they've got, Arsenal are doing well, and I can't speak highly enough of Arsenal.
Are you happy with the way that Manchester United seem to be running their recruitment? Because most of these incomings are clearly Ten Hag appointments.
Yeah, I think, but I also think it just seems like when you say happy with the recruiting, I haven't been happy with the recruiting over the last 5 to 10 years, because if you look at the amount of players we've brought through the door, the list is endless. You know, you go all the way back to Di Maria coming in, Memphis we've been linked with today as well, potentially coming back to Manchester United. You know, Wilfried Zaha came in, top quality players that don't get given the opportunity. So if players like Memphis do come back, hopefully he can show the same type of form he showed, you know, at Barcelona and that type of stuff. But I've not been happy to recruitment, but Ten Hag is in now, bringing in the players that he knows, and hopefully that can help the team. But I just think we haven't looked like we've had a clear plan, buying players without a real plan of what they're going to do. Hence the fact Cristiano Ronaldo's come in. If we were going to play a high-pressing game, Ralf Rangnick and Ten Hag, why would you bring Cristiano Ronaldo to the club? But for me, if it stopped him going to Manchester City, I'm happy with that, because if I saw Cristiano Ronaldo in a Manchester City shirt or a Chelsea shirt, it would really hurt me.
Brilliant to have you with us on Deadline Daily, and thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
OK, this is where we're headed next. Manchester City will hear from their new signing after the break.
Live to Aston Villa and Leicester very shortly. Next to Manchester City, who have signed defender Manuel Akanji on a 5-year deal from Borussia Dortmund for £16.7 million. Here's Ben Ransom. It's City's 5th signing of the summer. Ben, good afternoon. What do we know about him?
Yeah, good afternoon. Well, I can tell you that Manchester City feel they've got really good value for money with this signing. Initial fee of just over £15 million, rising, as you say, with add-ons to closer to £17 million. But that's because this was a player in the final year of his contract. Swiss international defender Ziki Begiristan, the club's sporting director, says he fits the profile of the player that they want to bring to Manchester City. Quick, he's good on the ball, which is obviously absolutely essential for a centre-half playing in a Pep Guardiola side. He's strong and he's got experience at the top level of European competition as well. They see him as a player that can come in and fit seamlessly into this group and have an impact in both the Premier League and Champions League. Interesting too to hear from Manuel Akanji himself talking about the role that Erling Haaland played a couple of days ago when this move first came to light, that Haaland messaged him. He was the first man to message him and try and encourage him to come to Manchester City. He's the 3rd player, would you believe, that's played for Dortmund that's joined City this summer.
I'm really proud and I'm really happy to be here. It came a little bit out of nowhere in the last couple of days, but yeah, when City asked me if I wanted to come here, I had no doubts, and yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm here to prove myself as well. I want to show them what they may be thinking of me, and I want to prove myself here. I'm a defender who really likes to play from the back as well, like who tries to help the keeper, who tries to build up from the back, who's fast, physically strong.
Well, he's taken a rather famous shirt number already, number 25, that of outgoing club captain Fernandinho, who had such success in his time here. He has been registered in time to play against Aston Villa this weekend, although you would say that seems pretty unlikely to throw him straight in, given he won't have had much time to train with his new teammates. All the talk this summer, though, has been around a possible departure of Bernardo Silva. Well, today, obviously, counting down to that deadline, is there chance of a late bid? Well, it looks very much as though Bernardo Silva is staying at the club. Pep Guardiola has been quite clear in the last week or so that he's going nowhere. Silva started last night, that victory over Nottingham Forest here in Manchester, and after the game some quotes have emerged of him saying he's happy in Manchester and he's not going anywhere. So we're not expecting any major departures. Possibly some of the younger players might move today. We'll keep you across those deals. However, Manchester City do have a signing for the first team in Manuel Akanji.
Thank you, Ben.
Right, let's talk Tottenham, because they are considering their options in the market, with Dan James looking unlikely at this stage. We know there's a lot of interest in the Leeds forward. One of the names under discussion is Monaco's Gelson Martins, the 27-year-old Portugal winger, said to be keen to come to the Premier League. Fabio Paratici, Antonio Conte are said to have met to consider their other options in the market this morning, and Martins fits the profile of a player who can play on either the left or the right wing. They're trying to strengthen in the flanks. Spurs have also had some interest, by the way, in Lucas Moura, but they're not interested in letting him go on loan. Brian Hill still waiting for Spurs to bring in a replacement for him before he can then join Valencia on loan. He was there at Mestalla last season. They thought it might have been Dan James, but appears not to be the case. So that is as far as Spurs are concerned. And meanwhile, been a busy day for the bottom 2 clubs in the Premier League. So let's head to the Midlands now and hear all about it. We're going to be with Rob Dorset at Leicester in a moment. But first, Rob Jones is at Villa Park. Rob, good afternoon to you. A lot of the focus, of course, is on the future of Douglas Luiz and where he could be heading, or whether he stays at Villa Park. Where are we with that? And also Villa's hunt for a new midfielder.
Afternoon, David. Well, the stance from Aston Villa on Douglas Luiz remains the same as it was first thing this morning, that the player is not for sale, and they say that they've received no bids for the Brazilian as yet. But Aston Villa have had one bid of their own accepted, and that's for the Wolves player Leander Dendoncker, the Belgian, who is set to take a medical with Aston Villa later on today. €15 million, so just under £13 million bid for Dendoncker has been accepted. Villa have been one of 3 Premier League clubs who've shown an interest in Dendoncker throughout the course of this transfer window. Everton were one of them, West Ham another, but it is Villa who appear to be at the front of the queue at the moment for the Belgian international, who's been capped 29 times for his country, can play in central midfield and can also play in central defence as well. One of the midfield name that is on Villa's radar is Gerson, the Marseille midfielder, but at the moment Dendoncker is far closer. So from a Wolves perspective, that means that maybe they're a little bit closer to a couple of their targets. They're still looking at a midfielder themselves, but also Craig Dawson from West Ham. Villa had shown an interest and had made a bid earlier on this week as well, but it looks like Dawson is more likely to end up as a Wolves player by the end of the window, and Leander Dendoncker could be set to sign for Aston Villa.
Rob, thank you very much indeed. OK, so not just one but two Leicester, two Midlands clubs we're focusing on, and not just one but two Robs. Rob Dorset now, who is at Leicester. Rob, good afternoon to you. It's taken until the 1st of September, but Leicester have made their first significant signing of this summer window. Tell us about him.
Yeah, Wout Faes, centre-back, Belgian international, made his international debut, in fact, for Belgium last autumn in the World Cup qualifiers. Signed for, we think, £15 million, a deal that could rise to that from Reims. It's taken them a few days to get this one across the line. Direct replacement, Leicester hope, for Wesley Fofana, who, of course, they sold for £75 million to Chelsea a couple of days ago. And Leicester's supporters, you can understand, will be a little bit disappointed with that, perhaps as a straight swap. But Leicester are known to buy players who they believe they can improve. Faes is only 24 years old, so they believe they can improve him. He's got the ability already, they say, and I think that is shown by the fact that Leicester have given him a 5-year contract. That's how important they think he can be for Leicester going forward. Expect to see him at King Power Stadium tonight when Leicester take on Manchester United. He won't be in the matchday squad, of course, but he will get a chance then to meet the rest of his teammates. At the start of the day, Leicester wanted 2 new signings. They're still working on the second. Jeremy Boga, the former Chelsea academy player who's now at Atalanta, is definitely on their list. The reason that isn't happening at the moment, and there's a bit of a stall on that one, I'm told, in the last few minutes, is because Leicester want him as a loan option. Atalanta want him to be bought by Leicester outright, or at the very least, a loan with an obligation to buy. So that's the sticking point on Boga right now. Let's see how that moves over the next couple of hours. Leicester 1 in, 1 they hope still to come.
Thank you, Rob.
And we're just waiting for Jesse Marsh to sit down in this room for his news conference. We'll hear from him live next on Deadline Day.
So Jesse Marsch has sat down for his news conference ahead of the game against Brentford on Saturday. Lots on his agenda. Aubameyang in, potentially. Dan James, will he stay? Let's hear now from Jesse Marsch.
Longer, maybe it's a little bit shorter. We will see. He feels good. He feels confident that he will be ready fairly soon. So, we're kind of targeting after the international break. And then everyone else is in training, except for Stuart Dallas. So Junior Firpo, Luke Ayling, Liam Cooper, Patrick Bamford, all back. So some decisions on exactly which guys are ready to go for the weekend, but they're all in training, looking healthy, looking strong, and ready to go. So that's a really good sign. The only other thing I'm going to give you as probably a disappointing update is I'm not really ready to comment at all on transfers just because I haven't spoken to Victor. We got off the training pitch, and I know that there's a lot going on over at Ellen Road, but I haven't heard exactly what yet. So, yeah, sorry about that. Let's talk about Brentford.
So, can I just ask you how you see today playing out? Will you, once this press conference is finished, speak to Victor, and how do you see the rest of the day playing out? Will you be satisfied if you can get one player in?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, he's active. I know we spoke when the day started, there was different discussions about strikers, but, not sure how it will play out, and I haven't had an update yet.
And players moving out, there's a lot of talk about Dan James at the moment. Would his departure be dependent on a player coming in?
Yeah, it's I'm not sure. I don't want to comment about Dan's situation either right now.
Let's talk about the game then.
Good.
Brentford, happy memories for you, and
yeah.
Can you tap into that going into the game this weekend? That sort of factor.
I mean, obviously we have good memories of playing down there last year. The situation is completely different now. I think Brentford's had a great start. I think they had a great season last year. I think it's a team that's very clear with the way they play football. And certainly when you talk about Brentford, you have to talk about set-piece situations and how effective and creative they are in those moments. So that was what the preparation solely today was about, looking at Brentford from what they do with set-pieces and what we need to be good at on the day. And I think in all ways we'll be expecting a tough match. And again, you see... There are some similarities between games that we've played so far, and then there are a lot of things that are different. And so for us, I think it's really important that we understand exactly what we think the opponent's going to present and then play to the way that we want the game to look and try to see if we can pull that out of each moment. But I thought we'll show tomorrow more Everton moments and how it applies to what we think will be important for Brentford. But again, I thought that when I went back and watched it again, especially the second half, but I think there were...
We'll keep a very close eye on the rest of that news conference involving Jesse Marsch. Noticeably, much shorter answers when asked about transfers, longer when he's talking about the game against Brentford. Let's get to one of the transfers of deadline day, potentially. Chelsea remain confident they can get Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Michael Bridge will be at Stamford Bridge up until the window shuts at 11 p.m. Michael, good afternoon. Tell us where we're at with this potential deal.
Hi, David. Yes, in some breaking news now, we can confirm an agreement has been reached between Chelsea and Barcelona for the transfer of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. It's a player Thomas Tuchel has wanted to fill that striker role. Talk's been going on for the last few weeks, but the player has now been given permission to fly to London to complete this move, finalise the deal, have a medical, and the deal is thought to be around £10 million, including Marcus Alonso going the other way. So Chelsea looking to get a couple in on deadline day, but the big one they wanted this striker, and it looks like they are going to get him, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Of course, last few years, Arsenal then went to Barcelona. He's had a good stint at Barcelona, but it looks like he's coming back to London, not North London, West London, for the blue of Chelsea. More on that as we get it. But Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang travelling to London to seal the deal at Chelsea.
Things are moving. Thank you, Michael.
And David, they're moving in the Championship as well because Brentford's Turkey international striker Halil Dervişoğlu has joined Burnley on loan, part of the Vincent Kompany revolution. He's 22. He is gone ahead of the closure of the window tonight, and it's a one-season loan with Burnley, who are third in the Championship right now. Transfer deadline day, such a big day for the fans. We love it. The fans love it. Let's get some fans' views now, live to Sky's Daniel Kahn.
Yes, welcome to Fan Central. I'm joined by Sophie Nicolau from the Highbury Squad podcast representing Arsenal, Ricky Sachs from The Last Word on Spurs representing Spurs, and Stephen McInerney, esteemed company representing Manchester City. So what we're going to do is Sophie and Ricky are both going to pitch for around 30 seconds why their clubs have had the best windows. And we're going to have Stephen from the Manchester City point of view, who I guess have done some really good business this summer.
It's been all right, man. It's been all right.
Be the judge. So what we're going to do, Sophie, I'm going to come to you first. I'm going to time you, right?
You have a buzzer beater.
3, 2, 1. Sophie, off you go.
I think Arsenal's transfer window's been spectacular this season because we've managed to acquire 2 absolute world-class players from a team that has done incredible things over the last few seasons. They've won the Premier League. They've been superb in the Champions League. They have that mentality and experience. 25 years old, yet come in with this mental attitude that is absolutely astounding. Already, Jesus is so infectious. He is absolutely masterminding how that team operates from a mental perspective right now. And Saliba feels like a new signing.
That was really good on 30 seconds. And Jesus was electric last night, wasn't he? Got the crowd going. Ricky, I'm going to start your 30 seconds. Off we go.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. If the window was to end as it is still, for me now, I think we do need more. But in relation to who we've signed so far, I think Richarlison has been a really good signing for Tottenham. We've signed a player in an area of strength in the squad with Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, Dejan Kulusevski. So, again, signing a player of that ilk, I think, will only benefit us. Premier League experience. Perisic, winner, serial winner under so many elite managers, been around the block, knows how to win. I think, again, it adds experience to an area of the pitch where we're fairly light. In midfield, Basuma, I think we all probably agree against the top 6. Basuma has been.
I'm going to have to cut you there.
That sounded like 40
you had some time to
me.
Practice. I gave you 32. Sorry, Ricky.
Extra time.
Something, Sophie, that Ricky mentioned there is they have signed some really experienced players in Perisic. But equally, you probably feel like signing 2 players from Man City has done that as well.
Well, I think that just adds so much value, and you're seeing it already. Also, even though Saliba hadn't played in the Premier League, he comes with a ton of experience being on loan in Liga, has had to defend against some really good players, and has also had a call up to the France squad playing with some of the best players in the world. So when you add that to our summer transfer window last season, I think that now you're seeing a bit more of a team in Mikel Arteta's image. And we've also gotten those players. Gabriel Jesus for 45 million, Zinchenko for 30. That's fantastic business, is it not?
I can see Ricky looking... I don't know if you look a bit jealous or...
It's still very, very early.
Richarlison.
Arsenal, again, they've done really well. 5 wins out of a possible 5. They've shown their mental strength by grinding out wins late on. But if we're being honest about it, they haven't faced anybody really inside that top 6. So let's hold our breath. It's far too early to get carried away by Arsenal's crazy start. Very, very early. Spurs at the moment, 8 points up on what they've already had last season. I think it's been steady but not spectacular from Tottenham. And the great thing about Spurs is there's still gears to move up in with Antonio Conte.
But before it gets too heated, I'm just going to bring in Stephen really quickly. I mean, Stephen, you're the expert here, the resident Premier League champion.
The expert, apparently.
And
I've got my CV, I think now.
Expert winning.
City've done some amazing business summer. So I feel like you're in a good position to judge who may be the winner so far. Who would you go with?
To be honest, look, someone always has to go home trophyless. And as per usual, it's Spurs. No, look, being serious, the way I'm judging it is who's improved their first team the most. And look, they've signed 2 Premier League winners with experience. And as good as Spurs' transfer window has been, it's essentially it's squad players mainly. Richarlison's a really good footballer, Basuma as well, and obviously Perisic brings experience. But Arsenal are currently top of the league because of that experience that they signed. And I can't deny right now, if I was an Arsenal fan, I'd be very, very happy. Thankfully, I'm a Man City fan, so I'm even happier. But I'm sorry, man, it's a good window, but Arsenal take the trophy.
I think we've had it there. Stephen's crowned Sophie the winner of our first fan battle of the afternoon.
Our first trophy of the season. I like it.
I think you've heard it here first. Arsenal are the winners out of Arsenal and Spurs in the North London derby. Back to you in the studio.
Ricky took it well, didn't he? Fulham fans, get excited. Willian and his representatives are at your training ground signing the contract right now. Will be a free agent. Rumours are of a 1-year deal. However, as things stand, Aston Villa not prepared to sell Douglas Luiz to Arsenal. The situation could change later, depending on Leandro Dendoncker deal, because, of course, he is potentially joining from Wolves, £30 million agreed fee. Price might rise, though, as a result for Douglas Luiz. Arteta wants the player. He's worked with him at Manchester City, and the player wants to join Arsenal, but we know they're not the only suitors, because last night Liverpool and Atletico Madrid also made a move for him. Chelsea also reportedly interested, as are Juventus. Now, Douglas Luiz himself can speak to foreign clubs like Atleti, like Juve from the 18th November. He can leave as a free agent next summer. Less than 9.5 hours for any potential deal to be done. Welcome back. Just to recap the significant breaking news from this hour. Chelsea have an agreement in principle with Barcelona to sign striker Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. The player's been given permission to fly to the UK for a medical and finalise this deal. The deal is now thought to be worth around £10 million, with Marcos Alonso heading in the opposite direction to the camp now. Personal terms not expected to be a problem. That news brought to us by Dominik Ethinkave. Solid call, by the way. You can see a special 2-hour transfer show from 6 p.m. Nick.
David, breaking news from Everton. We hear they are close to completing the signing of the Manchester United midfielder James Garner. The deal's worth around £15 million. I'm also hearing Everton have given up in their attempts to sign the Watford striker João Pedro. Everton's final offer was for a loan with an option to buy Pedro for a fee worth just over £20 million. Watford didn't want to sell him, but wouldn't entertain the option of a loan unless it included an obligation to buy for £30 million. Everton are still trying to bring in a new striker to the club. They're now looking elsewhere. We'll keep you in touch with developments from Goodison. What about Newcastle? Still coming to terms with that heartbreaking defeat at Anfield last night. The goals, like all last night's goals, available for you on the Sky Sports app. They could be about to sign a defender this lunchtime. Keith Downey, good afternoon. What's the news?
Yeah, hi Nick. It's been pretty quiet here on Tyneside this morning as far as Newcastle United are concerned. They do want to bring in new faces though, and the one you allude to there is the West Ham right back Harrison Ashby. He's just 20 years of age, but Newcastle, if they can get him, see him as first team material, as backup to Kieran Trippier. Of course, Emil Kraft is out injured for at least 6, potentially 9 months with an ACL injury, and they want to bring in reinforcements in that area. I'm told talks are taking place between Newcastle and West Ham United in the hope that Newcastle could potentially land Ashby today. He is a Scottish under-21 international. So not the big name, the huge name that Newcastle United fans want as yet, but at least it shows as we stand here they are active on deadline day.
I'm excited about the possibility of Yuri Tielemans maybe coming. Is that still a possibility?
Yeah, Nick, Tielemans is a player that Newcastle have been interested in a while. That interest has stood for much of this transfer window. We told you yesterday that a bid of £25 million would land the Belgian international. Newcastle are interested. I think the issue for Newcastle and Tielemans, though, would be wages. He has just 1 year left, or under 1 year left now of his contract. If he lets that run until the end of the season, he can pretty much name his price in terms of wages, whichever team comes in for him. So it'd be a big decision for Tielemans to decide to pack up and leave Leicester now. I think Newcastle would need to break their wage structure if they were to land him. So I think that is the question as far as Newcastle are concerned. But as we stand here just now in the afternoon on deadline day, it's my information that Newcastle are chasing one, potentially 2 deals. I've obviously mentioned Ashby to you already, but as they stand, things are up in the air, and I would say 50-50 at present. So Newcastle still active, but I think at this moment in time feeling a little bit frustrated.
A really interesting transfer summer for Newcastle. Leanne Sanderson is back with us. What have you made of their dealings overall?
Yeah, I think obviously when the takeover happened, everybody was linking them to Messi, Mbappe, all these other players. But I think Eddie Howe has done an amazing job. I don't think people speak highly enough of people like Eddie Howe and Graham Potter. I think those types of English managers are doing really, really well. I think obviously the emphasis was on St Maximum at Newcastle. Obviously Callum Wilson gets injured quite often. So, you know, it'd be interesting to see they brought in Chris Wood early on. But I think they look like a team that knows exactly what they're doing. I think bringing in Trippier early doors was really helpful as well. So I think, I think Newcastle are in a really, really good way. I'm sure the Newcastle fans are so happy because they were so disappointed for so many years, weren't they? Based upon the fact of their style, the ownership and what they're doing. So I've been happy with how they've been, and I'm sure the Newcastle fans are buzzing.
Yeah, we're going off to
obviously last night, them playing the additional minutes. That type of stuff, I felt for them. I mean, being a Man United fan, I know how much that's helped us in previous years. So the fact that there was 8 minutes added on, they will feel really, really hard done by.
You mentioned Brighton and Graham Potter. We're going live there in just a second. Just one more on Alexander Isak specifically. Could he become a real world star based on Tyneside?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the thing about the Newcastle fans, they're infectious. They love their team. They love their players. And I think, obviously, getting a goal in his first game really, really helps. I think they look different when he went off the pitch as well. So, definitely, don't get too carried away. Let him still get settled. It's going to take a while. But the fact he's got a goal on his first game is unbelievable. And, yeah, I think he can become a hero, definitely.
Thanks, Liam.
Well, Nick mentioned it there. If you support Brighton, this is your moment. The club have made profits on sales. There's some of the likes of Cucurella and Basuma moving out. Could they add to their squad today, though? And Naropa is at Brighton's training ground. Hi there, Eleanor. Billy Gilmore is the name on fans' lips. Could that be a deal that's done today?
Yeah, a lot of speculation around Gilmour, and we wait to see if he could come here to Brighton. Now, he's back at Chelsea after being out on loan to Norwich last season, but if the midfielder is to come here to Brighton, it will have to be on a permanent deal. Now, Premier League rules mean that each club can only bring one player on loan from another Premier League club, and Brighton have already taken Levi Colwill on loan from Chelsea. So, if Gilmour is to come here this afternoon, it will have to be on a permanent deal. Now, Sky Sports News understands that Chelsea have been reluctant to release Gilmour on a permanent basis because of concerns that they have about injuries in the midfield. But they have put in a late bid this afternoon with Edson Alvarez. Now, if that comes off, they therefore could be more likely to release Gilmour, and we could see a move here to Brighton. But still, plenty of speculation around that at this stage. And the club this afternoon saying otherwise we could just see a few youth players going out on loan, but other than that, they are not expecting much business before the end of the day.
Ellie, thank you very much indeed.
Well, let's get a word, first of all, about Billy Gilmour from Leanne. Is he a player you like?
Yeah, I really like him, but I think it's an example of when a player goes out on loan. Obviously, he went to Norwich, didn't really work out. The fans weren't really on his side. Conor Gallagher goes out on loan to Palace, does unbelievably well. So I think the fact that he's been linked to Brighton, I mean, Brighton now, I think Brighton are going in the right direction. Obviously, Maupay has gone to Everton, and I think that, you know, are Everton a bigger club than Brighton at this moment in time? Not quite sure about that when it comes to league standings. Yes, maybe in its entirety. So I think the fact that going to Brighton would be a good move for him, but I do think going to Norwich was maybe detrimental to him because he didn't really play very well. The fans were on his back, but hopefully he can get that break because he's not going to play at Chelsea, is he? He's not.
So what does he need to get his career back on track? We've seen the ability. Scotland love him. Scotland fans love him. We've seen glimpses when he was at Chelsea, but it's not really happened like we thought it might.
No, and I think it goes down to environment of where you're playing. Clearly, he wasn't happy at Norwich, you know, and he wasn't getting the best out of himself. You have to look at yourself firstly. You can't always blame your manager and your teammates, and not that he was doing that, but I've been in situations like that before where you have to look within. I don't think he's a bad player. I just think he needs a bit of a change of an environment. I'm not quite sure. Being a club like Chelsea, obviously you're going to want to stay at a club like Chelsea, aren't you? Hence the fact they had about 30 players go out on loan next year, and I think Batshuayi is still part of Chelsea, and they won't allow him to leave on a permanent deal and only loan deals. Chelsea do that quite often, but I think Billy Gilmour just needs to be able to play, and he's not really going to play at Chelsea with their list of players they have. He's not. So I think a move away would be good for him, a permanent move. I really do.
And what about that breaking news that there is an agreement in place, in principle, for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to come to Chelsea? What a story.
Yeah, I mean, I love Aubameyang. I mean, obviously, I was quite big advocacy for him when he got the captaincy taken away from him. Now I've watched the documentary. I've changed my mind a little bit because I don't think it made him look that good within that Arsenal documentary. But I do think, you know, that this is a massive signing for Chelsea. I think Sterling has gone in there, done an amazing job, you know, scored, got off to a flyer, but he's not a number 9. I think Chelsea desperately need that. Kai Havertz isn't a number 9 either. So I think the fact they can get Aubameyang in there, and as we've seen at City, if you get players like Haaland that will stay in that 6-yard box and poach the goals in, anything is possible. And Aubameyang has that in his locker. I like Aubameyang. I like the way he is. I like the way his personality is. And he's not for everybody, is he? You know, the things he does, but I like him, and I think if Chelsea can get him in the way that they have, I think he wanted to do a 3-year deal. They've done a 2 with an option, so I think why not? Thomas Tuchel knows how to get the best out of him. He did at Dortmund, so it makes sense.
And he still likes him despite all he said. He gave me a lot of trouble, but I still love him. But he is a player who takes a little bit of managing, is he not?
But that's what the managers need to do. I don't think when someone just has disciplinary problems, just get him out the door. I mean, I understand why Arteta did. In the end, he said he had a list of what he could have got rid of him for. And ultimately, Arteta probably didn't want it to end in the way that it did. But it did. But managers have to manage. You know, you're not always going to get... I've had teammates that, you know, were goody two-shoes, and I've had teammates that were not. But you have to manage each players, and you have to do that. That's what managers are there for. You can't just keep getting rid of every player that's late, because I'm sure there'd be a lot of Premier League footballers that wouldn't be within their teams, because I'm not saying you should be late. It's a bad thing, but Aubameyang's a great signing for Chelsea.
And it's one of the great stories of deadline day. Leanne, thank you. Another one is this man, Arthur Melo. He's flown into England. There's a loan deal on the table for Liverpool. Keep you in touch.
And we've got all bases covered here for you at Sky. Reporters out and about, up and down the country, and there is a palpable buzz of excitement here in the newsroom too as we approach 9 hours to go.